Scroll through your phone for 30 seconds and you will see it. A friend just bought a house. Someone from high school just got engaged. A stranger just quit their job to start a company that is already making money. And there you are, lying in bed, wondering why your life still feels like a rough draft. Here is the strange part. Almost everyone you know is asking the exact same question about themselves. The confident coworker, the friend who seems to have a 5-year plan. Even the person whose life you are quietly comparing yourself to right now. Statistically, most of them feel just as lost as you do. So if nobody actually has it figured out, why does it feel like you are the only one who missed the memo? The answer says less about you and more about how your brain was built to compare. Let's start with a simple truth. You are not comparing your life to reality. You are comparing it to a highlight reel. Psychologist Leon Festinger discovered something called social comparison theory back in the 1950s. His idea was simple. In the absence of a clear way to measure ourselves, we look at other people to figure out where we stand. That instinct made sense for most of human history. You compared yourself to the 50 or so people in your village. Now you compare yourself to a curated feed of 7,000 strangers, all posting their best days. Festinger never imagined a version of comparison running 24 hours a day, in your pocket, updating in real time. But here's where it gets interesting. Not all comparison hits the same. Researcher Abraham Tesser found that we are not actually most threatened by strangers succeeding. We are most threatened by people close to us succeeding in something we personally care about. A random celebrity buying a mansion barely registers, but a close friend in your exact field landing the job you wanted. That one stings for weeks. Your brain does not treat all success equally. It treats familiar success as a direct measurement of your own failure, even when the two have nothing to do with each other. Now something surprising happens once you understand this. Social media does not just give you more people to compare yourself to. It quietly rewrites the rules of comparison itself. Researchers call this context collapse. In real life, you compared yourself to your neighbors, your classmates, your coworkers, one context at a time. Online, every context merges into a single feed. The newly engaged couple, the 6-figure job announcement, the beach vacation, the promotion, all stacked on top of each other in one scroll. Your brain cannot separate a 22-year-old's lucky break from a 40-year-old's 20 years of work. It just sees success, 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 and quietly asks why your life looks nothing like that. There's another layer most people never think about. It's called time collapse. On social media, you are not seeing one moment in someone's life. You are seeing the best moment from every stage of everyone's life, all at once. The wedding from one friend, the dream job from another, the paid-off house from a third. In reality, those milestones happened years apart through completely different paths, most of them uglier than they looked online. But your feed presents them side by side in the same 5 minutes, as if everyone is winning every category of life simultaneously. That illusion has a name. Psychologists call it chronic self-discrepancy, and it is one of the most quietly exhausting mental habits of modern life. Here is where the story gets even stranger. This feeling of being behind is not new. It existed long before smartphones. Developmental psychologist Bernice Neugarten described something called the social clock, an invisible, culturally agreed upon timetable for when life events are supposed to happen. Graduate by 22, marry by 30, buy a house by 35. Neugarten found that people who hit these milestones on schedule were seen as on time, and people who did not were seen as off time, even if nothing was actually wrong with their lives. The wild part is that nobody voted on this schedule. It was inherited, absorbed, and treated like biology, when it was really just culture wearing a disguise. What most people don't realize is that this clock was built for a world that no longer exists. In 1975, the average home cost around $88,000, adjusted for inflation. Today, it is well over $400,000. Back then, 45% of people in their 20s and 30s had hit the 4 major adulthood milestones: marriage, kids, a home, a stable career. Today, that number has dropped to 21%. The math changed completely. The clock did not. You are being measured against a timeline built for an economy that stopped existing decades ago, and quietly blamed for not keeping up with a race that was quietly rigged from the start. This is where a second, sneakier bias enters the picture. It is called pluralistic ignorance. first studied by researchers Gordon Allport and Daniel Katz. It happens when a group of people privately feel the exact same doubt, but publicly act like everyone else has it together, because they assume they are the only ones struggling. Think of a classroom where nobody asks a question because everyone assumes they are the only one confused, when in reality, the entire room is lost. The same thing happens with adulthood. Everyone is quietly unsure. Nobody says it out loud. And that silence gets mistaken for confidence, which makes the next person feel even more alone in their doubt. This changes everything once you see it clearly. The people who look like they have it figured out are often performing the same certainty you are faking. Psychologist Valerie Young studied this exact feeling in her research on imposter syndrome and found it clusters into recognizable patterns. The perfectionist, who feels like a fraud the moment something is not flawless. The expert, who feels exposed the moment they do not know something. The soloist, who feels weak for needing help. The superhuman, who feels like a failure unless every part of life is thriving at once. Around 82% of people report feeling like imposters at some point. That is not a small, broken minority. That is nearly everyone, quietly performing confidence they do not fully feel. So what actually breaks this cycle? Psychologists point to a method sometimes called catch it, check it, change it. First, catch the should statement running in your head. Something like, I should own a home by now. Second, check it against reality. Is that a personal failure, or is it a 90% increase in housing costs over a decade? Third, change the thought into something based on your actual values instead of an inherited deadline. Researcher Kristen Neff adds another piece, something she calls common humanity, the simple, grounding fact that the majority of people around you are silently carrying this exact same doubt. There is a useful way to picture this across an entire lifetime, not just a single bad week. Author Mel Robbins describes each decade as having its own job instead of one universal deadline. Your 20s are not for having it figured out. They are the decade of possibility, built for exploring, failing, and changing direction without shame. Your 30s are the decade of honesty, where you finally start choosing based on your own values instead of everyone else's checklist. Your 40s are a launch pad, not a finish line, and research on entrepreneurship actually shows this is the peak age for founders starting successful companies. Your 50s open the door to reinvention, and your 60s and beyond are not a retirement cliff. They are simply another chapter to stay engaged in. Viewed this way, feeling lost in your 20s is not a warning sign. It is exactly on schedule for a decade whose entire purpose is not knowing yet. Here is the honest reframe. You are not behind. You are early in a version of the story nobody put on your feed. The people who seem ahead are often one bad month away from feeling exactly like you do tonight. The timeline you are measuring yourself against was never a law of nature. It was a guess made decades ago by people living in a completely different world. You do not need to catch up to a schedule that was already broken before you were born. You need to notice that the finish line you are chasing was drawn by someone else for a race you never agreed to run. If this made you rethink your own invisible checklist, drop a comment with the one should statement you are ready to let go of. And if you know someone who has been quietly comparing themselves to everyone else's highlight reel, send them this video. They are probably closer to figured out than they think.